But then there's also, as you pointed out while we're talking, um, it's a mountain in the land of Moriah, Mount Moriah, and if you look at the scholars, if you look at the sages of Israel, they'll say, you know, where Isaac was crucified, or hmm, I'm
Offered
getting
up.
ahead of myself.
Yeah.
Where Isaac was to be offered is where the temple stands today, or should be standing today. It was where the temple was built and where the third temple will be rebuilt. But some also see that it's the place where Jesus was crucified. Well, Jesus wasn't crucified on the Temple Mount, but if you look at the maps, antique maps, you'll find that it's on the same mountain range. So the place where the Akedah happens, the binding of Isaac happens, and the place where the temple is built, where God's glory dwelt, and then where Jesus would be offered up as a sacrifice, are all on the same mountain range. That's another connection between Isaac and Yeshua, Isaac and Jesus. Um, yeah. Uh, but there's a problem with this whole concept of God commanding Abraham to offer Isaac as a sacrifice, because it comes on later on. But Jeremiah 7:31, it says, and God brings up this his problem with Israel. And his problem is this: to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I did not command, nor did it come to my mind. Well, one second, God. If the idea of sacrificing our sons and daughters in the fire never came into your mind, what do you have to say about this, where you commanded Abraham to offer up Isaac as a burnt offering, an offering made by fire? So, the Radak aptly points out that, God's commandment to Abraham to offer Isaac as an offering is just that. He says, offer him. And we are trained to think, oh, an offering is a sacrifice that requires slaughter, and we'd be right. But, people say that the devil's in the detail. I love to say that God is in the details, because he is. Because just by looking at the phrase there, he says, offer him. He doesn't say, it doesn't necessarily include an actual slaughtering of the son. But you might think that, oh, that's just copying out. So let's go on.
Would it be like an attempt?
Yeah.
Attempt.
Yeah.
It's not the physical action. It is almost like, what are you willing? Are you willing to do this? I'm not telling you that you're going to do the actual physical offering, but are you going to make the attempt to prove to me?
Yeah. Yeah, and Abarbanel in the 15th century makes the same observation that I did when I thought of Jeremiah 7:31. And he goes, it can't be that God actually meant for him to sacrifice Isaac, because that would confuse God's moral law. It would make it just doesn't mesh with God's character. So Rambam feels the same way, and in his Guide for the Perplexed, chapter 3, verse 32, he says, the purpose of the Akedah, the binding, was to proclaim the truth that it is possible for a person to love and fear God so profoundly that he will do his will, God's will, even against natural parental love. But God never intended that Isaac actually be sacrificed, nor was it ever fulfilled. So he's looking at it and saying, look, we're going to see this, jumping ahead, but Isaac is never actually sacrificed. So that was never the intention. That means it doesn't actually violate the moral law.
Mhm.
It doesn't violate God's character because, like you said, the important thing was just obedience up to a certain point. It's a test in one way. And, if you've ever been to Sunday school, kids' church, you've heard this being taught in that language. It was a test. And, we tend to gloss over that. We tend to, you know, think of it in childish terms and discredit God if we have any doubt in our hearts. And just hang on with me. Um, Rashi in the 11th century, well, actually, before that, Midrash Tanhuma states that the potter does not test defective vessels. So too, God tests the righteous to reveal their strength to the world. That makes sense, right? If you know something's defective, you're not going to test it to see. If I am working on a helicopter and I see that a blade is bad, I'm not going to measure the pressure in the blade. I'm going to say it's bad. What do we need to do to fix it? Do we need to send it up to eye level, or is there something that we can do to make it okay?
Mhm.
Think of it. If you know the battery's bad, you're not going to go test the alternator. You're going to change the battery. We just had to do that in one car. Uh, Life is full of examples as such as this. The important thing is to test. If you have a star student, you put him on the math team, you put him on the debate team, or her, equal opportunity here, uh, to test that child, to show to the rest of the world how established they are, how good they are at what they do. It's the same thing that God's doing. He knows what Abraham is made of, and he's testing him for our benefit, so that we see, so that we understand, oh, this is how God deals with people, and this is how we grow in our relationship with him. This is how we learn faith. This is how we walk.